This is Zain Khan Live. Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? What's really behind these UFOs if they're actually real? Is it classified military tech? Or are aliens actually controlling them? Are UFOs drones meant to spy on other countries? We're going to discuss all these topics with an expert, a best-selling author, and a writer who's actually spent many years in the British Ministry of Defense. He's spent his life researching on this subject. But before we get to our interview, I'd like to ask all our viewers to subscribe to our channel down below and keep on watching Zain Khan Live, where everything is discussed and nothing is censored. Today, the guest of our show is a very popular writer and also a researcher, Nick Pope. He's worked for the Ministry of Defense, the British Ministry of Defense, for many years. He was a very senior personnel, and right now he is a best-selling author on the subject. Welcome to our show, Nick. This is Zain Khan. It is a pleasure having you on Zain Khan Live.
Thank you. It's good to be on.
Nick Pope, our topic obviously revolves around UFOs, but before we get to our topic, I want our viewers to know a little bit of your background. Tell us more about, your work at the Ministry of Defense. Tell us a little more about you.
Certainly. I worked for the British government for 21 years at the Ministry of Defense, and I served in a number of different capacities. And for much of the early 90s, I was posted to a Ministry of Defense division where my job was to research and investigate the UFO phenomenon to see whether there were any indications of a potential threat to the United Kingdom or anything of more general defense and national security interest.
You've worked at the Ministry of Defense for such a long time. Tell us a little more about some declassified events where human aircrafts encountered UFOs.
Over the decades that the British government ran a UFO program, we had several cases where pilots encountered UFOs, and that included both military pilots and indeed commercial airline pilots. These were the sorts of cases that were of particular interest and concern to us on the UFO program. And these were often cases, of course, where, as well as the testimony from pilots, we had evidence, corroborating evidence from radar operators, again, military and civilian. So yes, over the years, we had numerous cases. We had a near miss between a commercial aircraft and a UFO in 1995, when a UFO was on intermediate approach to Manchester Airport. We had a military case certainly in the 50s, where pilots had detected UFOs on airborne radar. They'd been vectored to intercept, and where effectively a game of cat and mouse took place in the skies over the UK as part of an unsuccessful attempt to close on this object and to identify it. So we've had cases, and of course, as we've recently discovered through the media, the United States has had a number of cases too, including most famously in recent years the USS Nimitz incident from 2004, where Navy F-18 Super Hornets were involved in attempts to intercept these mystery objects.
You've just clearly mentioned confrontation. You've clearly mentioned that these instances were documented. I want to get a little more into the detail now. Tell us a little more about the nature of these UFOs. I mean, they're many schools of thought, many opinions, but two major opinions exist. One of them, which is obviously the popular one, says that the aliens are behind this, and aliens probably control these UFOs, and extraterrestrials are behind this. And there's this other school of thought which says that, you know, these UFOs are actually classified military technology. So what is your research about this? What do you think is the more probable version of reality?
The honest answer is that none of us really know for sure. And it may be that there is not a single neat solution to the UFO mystery. It may well be, for example, that a number of these sightings are secret prototype aircraft, missiles, or drones. They might belong to, and I speak now as a UK citizen based in the United States, they might be, for example, United States military technology, but from a part of the government or the intelligence community that is deeply compartmentalized, and these classified programs are not necessarily known wider within government. So one solution is that it might be our own technology. It may be that another nation, Russia perhaps, China, maybe somebody else, has developed something and is using it to probe our air defenses, to test how good our military radars are, to see how effective our air defense fighters are in terms of their response. Or it may be that there is some other solution, some other unknown solution. We are, of course, aware of the popular culture beliefs and interpretations of the UFO phenomenon in terms of extraterrestrial visitation. I don't think any of us who've looked at this from within government rule that out, but neither have we seen any definitive evidence that this is true. So at the moment, we keep an open mind on this. We go where the data take us, and we try not to let our preconceived knowledge and belief systems about all this influence our investigations.
I've always thought about this question, and since we're doing this interview, I want to ask you the question. Which was the first ever, I mean, how long does it go back? Which was the first ever documented instance where humans have encountered UFOs? I mean, was it Roswell? Because Roswell seems to be one of the most popular, instances.
Well, I think I would say certainly that in 1947, that marked the birth of the modern UFO phenomenon. And we had two incidents, one in June, one in July. June 24th, 1947, a light aircraft pilot called Kenneth Arnold encountered actually 9 delta-shaped objects performing extraordinary speeds and maneuvers for the time. And they were quickly called flying saucers by the media. And that, as I say, marked the birth of the modern phenomenon. Then just a month later, we had the so-called Roswell incident from New Mexico in the southwestern United States, where something crashed. Believers say extraterrestrial spacecraft. Skeptics say classified military program carrying equipment monitoring evidence of Soviet nuclear tests high in the atmosphere. We don't know. Most of the records, if not all of them, have been destroyed. Most of the witnesses, if not all of the contemporary witnesses, are now no longer with us. They've passed away. So we may never know the answer to that. I think I would say, of course, people throughout human history have always seen strange things in the sky, and sometimes these things have been worshipped as gods or feared as demons. So this phenomenon perhaps has always been with us, and it's only in modern times that we've coined these phrases like flying saucer, UFO, unidentified aerial phenomena, etc. But it is certainly, I think, something that has been with us, whatever its true nature, for a very long time.
Nick Pope, as you know, we've discussed that Roswell is one of the most popular instances when it comes to UFOs. So tell us a little more detail about it. Obviously, you're the expert, you're a researcher on this, you've written so much on the subject. Tell us a little more about, what really happened at Roswell.
Well, we know for a fact that something crashed, but the debris was very, very small. So this was something that impacted the ground, we think, at high speed and with a lot of integral mass for it to break up in the way it did. But as to the question of whether we are talking about some sort of terrestrial military hardware or something extraterrestrial, we really don't know. What we do know is that at the time, in 1947, the 509th Bomb Group, which was the unit, or really the main unit, military unit posted to the Roswell Army airfield, as it was at the time, this was the only atomic bomb capable squadron anywhere in the world. So these people were the best of the best, arguably the most elite military unit anywhere on the face of the planet. And so for the skeptics who say that they misidentified a weather balloon, albeit one engaged in classified military observations, it seems unlikely, because these elite military personnel, we understand from the location and the time, they saw weather balloons all the time, and they knew what a crashed weather balloon looked like. So it's stretching credulity, I think, beyond breaking point to suggest that they misidentified something mundane. So as I say, in a sense, we know that something crashed. We know in recent years that the United States Air Force and the General Accounting Office in the United States attempted to launch a retrospective investigation to see, after all these years, what we really knew about this. But it may be that the secrets of Roswell have been carried to the graves of those people involved, or that they are locked up in deep black programs so highly classified and compartmentalized that we'll never get to the truth.
Mr. Pope, I want to get to the last question, and this is one of my favorite questions, okay? And I want to be very clear about it when it comes to this question, and I hope we get to the bottom of it. According to your research, are aliens behind UFOs? Are aliens among us? Tell us a little more about this, because I want to know. Do you think right now planet Earth is being visited by aliens?
Well, I'm certainly a believer that in our infinite universe, nearly 14 billion years old, we're not going to be the only life. So I'm convinced that there is extraterrestrial life elsewhere in the universe, and I think it's a reasonable assumption that some of that life would, through processes here on Earth that we call random mutation and natural selection, that I think there would be a drive towards increased complexity of life, and indeed the drive to intelligence, because intelligence seems to be a very good survival strategy. So that being said, in a universe nearly 14 billion years old, imagine if there are other civilizations out there with just 1 million years head start on us in terms of their technological development, their understanding of science. I don't rule out absolutely the possibility that we are being visited. Having said that, while I've seen some intriguing evidence, I have not yet seen anything which I think could be characterized as definitive proof, positive, of that. And as I said earlier, it may be that when we look at the UFO mystery, there are a number of different solutions. Clearly, most of the reports we get are misidentifications. Some of them might be hoaxes. But yes, some could be extraterrestrial, but others, maybe there are other possibilities. Now some theoretical physicists are beginning to talk about concepts including other dimensions, even time travel. And maybe there are things for which at the moment human beings simply have no conceptual understanding and no language with which to describe it. So we may well find that there isn't one single neat solution to the UFO mystery. As to whether we're dealing with extraterrestrials, it's a possibility, and I hope we are. I think, as I have often said, the world would be a more interesting place with alien visitation than without. And if we are being visited, I hope that they are scientists, explorers, anthropologists, and that they are beginning to do what we are beginning to do, take our first steps out into the wider universe and ask what's out there.
Thanks so much, Nick Pope, for being on Zain Khan Live. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thanks, Zan. It's great to be back on the show.
This was Nick Pope, a researcher, a writer, a speaker, and also an expert on the subject. He worked in the British Ministry of Defense for many years. He was a very senior personnel. He wrote a lot on the topic of UFOs and extraterrestrials. We were just discussing the reality of UFOs and their history, and we've learned a lot of things in this episode of Zain Khan Live. And I'd like to have Nick back. I'd like to discuss a little more about, his opinions regarding aliens and alien invasion. But before we get to the end of our show, I'd like to ask all our viewers to subscribe to our channel down below and keep on watching Zain Khan Live. Take care and goodbye.